Welcome to the deep dive. If you're listening, you probably want to get a handle on, well, all the incredible stuff happening in medical research, especially where AI and, large language models are coming into play.
It's a really complex field moving super fast.
Exactly. So our mission today is basically to cut through some of that noise. We've waded through a whole stack of recent medical papers.
Right, trying to synthesize the key findings.
We want to give you the essential insights on how AI, especially these LLMs, are being used right now in healthcare.
And it's everywhere, really. From diagnosis, treatment prediction.
Medical imaging, even patient interactions, it's pretty broad.
Yeah, the studies we looked at cover, predicting drug overdoses, analyzing scans, checking out social media for health trends.
Even designing AI that could, act like a medical agent eventually.
It really shows the potential, doesn't it? The range is quite amazing.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. First up, drug overdose prediction. There was this really interesting paper looking at GPT-4o.
Yes, the one by Nahian and colleagues.
That's the one. Using insurance claims data to predict overdose risk, what really jumped out at me was the zero-shot aspect. They didn't specifically train it for that task.
Right, the zero-shot idea is fascinating.
Yeah.
You have a model with tons of general medical knowledge, and you just ask it to predict something specific, like overdose risk, without feeding it overdose examples beforehand.
So how did it stack up?
Well, they compared it to traditional machine learning models, the ones that were trained specifically on overdose data. And the LLM, GPT-4o in this case, could actually outperform them sometimes.
Wow. Even without the specific training.
Yeah. It suggests these big models can pick up on really subtle patterns in a patient's history. Things that might hint at risk, but aren't obvious flags.
Patterns that older models might just miss.
Exactly. Which could be, huge for spotting risk earlier and maybe intervening.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like it has this broader context. Okay, next, medical imaging. This thing called SilVar-Med.
Right, from Tan Han Pham and that group. A speech-driven visual language model.
Yeah,
sounds fancy.
It does. So what's the core idea?
Well, it does two key things. One, it looks at medical images, scans, whatever, and spots abnormalities. Standard stuff, kind of.
Okay.
But the really novel part is that it tries to explain its reasoning. So it doesn't just say problem here, it says why it thinks there's a problem based on the image.
Explainability. That's always a big deal with AI in medicine.
Definitely. And the speech-driven part is also pretty cool. The idea is the doctor could just talk to it, ask questions about the image.
Hands-free interaction. I can see how that would be useful.
Yeah, very practical potential there. They even made the code and a reasoning data set public, which is great for transparency.
Good stuff. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Social media. Maybe not the first place you'd think of for medical research.
Yeah, seems unlikely, right? But there's a study by Mohammed Ahmad's team using LLMs to find mentions of drug use or overdose symptoms online.
On platforms like Twitter or Facebook?
Exactly. The sheer volume of text there can, surprisingly, reveal public health trends if you can analyze it properly.
So how did they do it?
They built an AI framework, trained it on social media posts, and to make sure it was accurate, they used a mix LLMs, did a first pass at labeling data, then human experts checked and refined it. A hybrid approach.
Smart. And the results?
Pretty high accuracy, actually. It shows promise for, public health folks keeping an eye on trends in almost real time.
Could help spot outbreaks or target help to specific groups?
Potentially, yeah. Personalized intervention, maybe. It's an interesting angle.
Definitely innovative. Okay, another critical thing, especially with AI looking at images and answering questions, is consistency.
Absolutely. You need reliability.
So Young-Pin Ma and colleagues worked on this for medical visual question answering, or MVQA. What is that exactly?
So imagine you show an AI an X-ray, and you ask, is there pneumonia? MVQA is building systems that can do that, answer questions about medical images.
Got it. And the consistency problem
is that if you ask the same question slightly differently, like any signs of lung infection,
yeah,
you need the AI to give the same correct answer. It shouldn't get confused by phrasing.
Right, makes sense.
So they developed this framework, a CQ, that uses LLMs to automatically generate lots of different ways to ask the same question about an image.
Like creating test variations?
Sort of, yeah, to specifically test the system's consistency. They even came up with a new metric for it, TAR-S.
And did it help?
Significantly, they reported. Big improvements in consistency on standard MVQA datasets. That kind of robustness is vital if these tools are ever going to be properly trusted in clinics.
Absolutely vital. Now, these big LLMs, they're computationally heavy, right? Training them takes time, money.
And data. Lots of sensitive patient data, which you can't just pull together easily because of privacy rules.
Exactly. Which brings us to federated learning. Lihang Zhang and Yu Li looked at this for healthcare NLP. What's the quick version of federated learning?
Okay, so federated learning lets different places, like hospitals, train a shared AI model without actually sharing their private patient data.
How?
Each hospital trains the model on its own data locally. Then, only the changes to the model, the updates or parameters, get sent to a central server, averaged out, and sent back. Data stays put.
Protects privacy. Okay. And what was Zhang and Lai's specific contribution?
They called it layer-skipping federated learning.
Yeah.
They figured, hey, maybe you don't need to update every single part of a huge LLM for every task at every hospital.
Selective updates.
Right. Their method only fine-tunes certain layers across the different sites. This cuts down massively on the amount of data that needs to be sent back and forth.
Yeah.
Less communication costs.
And performance. Did it take a hit?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
They maintained good performance on clinical language tasks while making the whole process way more efficient. It's a clever optimization.
Makes these powerful tools more practical for real-world hospital networks.
Smart. Okay, another challenge. just keeping up with research itself. Oh yeah, the information overload is insane for researchers.
A big team, Linking Chen, Wiley Wang, lots of others, proposed a system to help streamline biomedical research using specialized LLMs.
Right, their approach is about combining the strengths of different tools.
How so?
They integrate general LLMs, which have broad knowledge, with more specialized models trained just on biomedical data. Plus, they use smart information retrieval.
So if a researcher asks a question,
This system can search literature and use the specialized LLMs to give a more nuanced, context-aware answer. They even built in cross-validation checks.
trying to make the answers more reliable.
Exactly. The goal is an accessible platform to speed up research for scientists and pharma professionals.
Sounds incredibly useful. But what about AI talking directly to patients, chatbots and the like?
That's a whole different ballgame, with its own risks.
Yeah, the Cancer Myth paper by Wang Bill Zhu's group looked into this. They tested how well AI chatbots handle patient questions about cancer, especially when the question itself is based on a myth or false assumption.
And what did they find? It's a tricky area.
They found current LLMs often stumble. If a patient asks something like, "Since chemo didn't work, should I try drinking bleach?" Obviously dangerous nonsense. The chatbots might try to answer the should I part without strongly correcting the incredibly dangerous false premise about bleach.
Oof. That's worrying. They don't always catch the underlying misinformation.
Not reliably, no. The researchers created a data set, Cancer Myth, specifically with these kinds of questions containing false presuppositions.
To test the AIs rigorously.
Right. And the results showed even advanced LLMs are pretty limited in their ability to correct these things effectively right now.
It really highlights the danger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Relying on these purely for patient info without human oversight or much better safety rails seems risky.
Definitely a critical point. Okay, another challenge for LLMs dealing with rare stuff, the long tail of knowledge.
Ah, yes. Common things are easy. Rare diseases or niche facts are harder.
Xinhao Yi and their team asked, basically, can we effectively edit LLMs to teach them about this rare long-tail biomedical knowledge?
Knowledge editing, trying to update or inject specific facts into a pre-trained model.
Yeah. So can we do it well for the rare stuff?
Their findings suggest it's tough. The editing methods work okay, but performance on that long-tail knowledge still lags way behind performance on common knowledge.
Why is that?
They think it might be because rare medical knowledge often involves more complex relationships. Like, one rare disease might have multiple non-obvious connections.
Yeah.
It's harder for the AI to integrate correctly.
So accurately handling the full breadth of medical knowledge, including the uncommon, is still a work in progress.
Very much so. It's not just about knowing facts, but understanding the complex web of connections.
Right. Okay, let's switch back to something showing more immediate promise, getting insights from doctors' notes.
Clinical notes, yeah, tons of rich information, but usually unstructured text. Hard to analyze systematically.
David Anderson and colleagues had a paper, Paging Dr. GPT, looking at this, using GPT-4 Mini, I think.
So what was the approach? Extracting specific info?
Yeah, they had the AI answer specific questions about patient discharge summaries, like, does the patient have a history of heart failure? Based on the text.
Okay, and then they use those AI-generated answers.
Exactly. They fed those answers into predictive models, in this case, predicting patient mortality.
And how did it compare to just using the standard structured data like diagnosis codes and lab results?
The models using the GPT extracted info actually did better than models using only the structured data.
Really? That's significant.
And even better, combining both the structured data and the GPT answers gave the best predictions overall.
So it's unlocking value that's just sitting there in the text node.
Pretty much. Shows the power of LLMs for pulling out meaningful details from that unstructured text.
Fascinating. Okay, back to imaging again. Jing-Kun Chen's group worked on combining human gaze with AI explanations for image segmentation.
That sounds complex. Human gaze.
Yeah, the idea is when an expert radiologist looks at a scan, where their eyes focus tells you something about what's important.
Their attention highlights key areas.
So this research tried to use that gaze data, where clinicians look along with descriptions generated by vision language models, to help train another AI model to do segmentation.
Segmentation being outlining specific areas, like a tumor.
Exactly. Identifying and drawing boundaries around regions of interest.
And using gaze helps.
The idea is it provides a form of weak supervision. Instead of needing someone to painstakingly draw perfect outlines on thousands of images, which is slow and costly,
Right.
you use the clinician's gaze patterns and the AI's descriptions as clues to guide the segmentation model. They use a teacher-student approach.
So the teacher uses gaze and descriptions to teach the student model how to segment.
Precisely. And they reported better results, better dice windows, which is a measure of segmentation accuracy, using this method. It's a clever way to leverage expert intuition.
Very clever. Now, thinking about patient interaction again, Jing Chen and team developed something called CliniChat for clinical interview dialogues.
Yeah, CliniChat is a framework aimed at making AI-driven conversations that mimic clinical interviews more realistic and useful.
How does it work?
It has two main components. CliniRecon helps reconstruct or generate these interview-style dialogues, and CliniEval helps evaluate how good those generated dialogues are.
What makes them good?
Accuracy, naturalness, covering the right topics. The framework pulls in knowledge from multiple sources to make the AI side of the conversation more informed.
And they built resources too.
Yes, they created a new dataset called MedQA Dialogue and a specific model, CliniChat GLM, trained for this kind of interaction.
So the goal is AI that can maybe handle initial patient intakes or provide basic info in a conversational way.
That seems to be the direction, yeah. Improving patient experience, maybe freeing up clinicians.
Interesting potential. Now, related to AI and interaction, but from the public's perspective, mental health.
Ah, the TikTok study.
Right. Anna Carolina Hansch looked at social media comments about using LLMs for mental health support. What do people say?
It was quite striking. Overwhelmingly positive comments from people who said they'd actually used LLMs for this.
Positive in what way?
Saying things like, the AI listens better than my therapist, that it's always available, non-judgmental, provides emotional support.
Wow. But were there concerns too?
Oh, definitely. People raised issues about privacy, the lack of real empathy or professional qualifications, the potential for bad advice. It's a mixed bag.
So people are already turning to these tools even though they aren't, designed or approved as therapy.
Exactly. It shows this is happening organically, and it raises a ton of questions about ethics, safety, and the future role of AI in mental well-being.
A really important area to watch. Okay, let's pivot back to the more technical side, radiology and 3D reconstruction.
Right. Yue Jiang and colleagues did a big literature review on AI for creating 3D views from 2D scans.
What were the main takeaways?
They basically categorized the different AI methods being used, sorting them into explicit and implicit approaches. Technical stuff about how the 3D shape is represented. Right? They also covered how these methods are evaluated, what data sets are available, the current challenges like handling different image qualities, and where the research might go next. It's a good snapshot of that specific field.
Useful for researchers in that space, and staying very specialized. Histopathology, microscopic tissue images.
Yeah, Sang-Wook Kim's team developed ChatEXAONEPath. They're calling it an expert-level multimodal LLM for this.
Expert level is a bold claim. How did they train it?
On a huge number of whole slide images, these super high-res scans of tissue samples paired with the actual pathology reports written by doctors.
So image and text data together, multimodal.
Exactly. They created a pipeline to automatically generate training data from these pairs. And importantly, they developed an AI-based evaluation system that was reviewed by pathologists.
And the results, did it perform at an expert level?
The claim is it showed a strong ability to diagnose from the images with accuracy that impressed the human experts who reviewed it. So definitely pointing towards AI being a powerful assistant for pathologists.
That's impressive. How about LLM supporting doctors more generally? Diagnosis and treatment support?
Diogo Sousa's group looked at this by testing various LLMs on a real medical licensing exam in Portugal.
The actual exam?
Yeah, the 2024 National Exam for Medical Specialty Access. They fed the questions to different LLMs, GPT versions, Quad, etc.
And how did they do? Pass the exam?
Performance varied a lot. Some did surprisingly well, approaching the pass mark for humans. Others, not so much. Accuracy differed, and so did the cost of running the queries.
So not ready to replace doctors just yet?
Definitely not. The conclusion was more that they show potential as complementary tools. Aids, assistance maybe for double-checking or generating summaries, but not for making final decisions alone.
Reinforces that AI as assistant idea. Now, making these big models run efficiently is still a theme. Quantization.
Right, shrinking the models to run on less powerful hardware.
Zhongxian Yang and team introduced QM-ToT, a framework to make quantized models better at medical reasoning.
Okay, so quantized model, QM, plus tree of thoughts, 2T.
Seems like it. Tree of thoughts is that reasoning technique where the AI explores different lines of thinking, evaluates them, and then picks the best path to an answer.
Right. More sophisticated than just spitting out the first answer.
So QM-ToT applies this 2T approach, plus some extra evaluation layers, specifically to boost the performance of quantized LLMs on medical tasks.
Does it work? Make the smaller models smarter.
They reported significant accuracy gains on the MedQA USMLE dataset. It suggests you can get quite complex reasoning even out of these more efficient models using the right framework. That's key for deployment in real clinics where you might not have supercomputers.
Exactly. Makes advanced AI more accessible.
Looking even further ahead, what about designing the AI doctors of the future?
The medical agent concept. Yingyang Zhuang and colleagues are working on automatically searching for the best ways to build these agents.
Letting AI design AI.
Kind of. They created a structured way to define possible agent architectures, like different ways to organize tasks, retrieve information, make decisions. It's hierarchical.
So the AI can explore different designs.
Yeah, and adapt its workflow. They model the agent like a graph of components. They tested it on skin disease diagnosis and found their automatically searched architectures performed better.
It's like automated architecture engineering for medical AI. Very meta.
Very meta, but potentially powerful for building more effective systems down the line.
Okay, let's zoom back into a specific application. Cardiac ultrasounds.
Andy Dimnaku's team developed an AI navigation system for those.
Navigation, like GPS for the ultrasound probe.
Almost. It's designed to help the user find a specific part of the heart anatomy, the inferior vena cava, or IVC. Getting a good view of the IVC is important for assessing fluid status and other things.
So the AI guides the user.
It uses a decision model based on the image feed to tell the user how to move the probe to get the right view.
And how well did it work?
Very well, apparently. Strong performance in localizing the IDC, even on lower quality videos you might get from handheld, portable ultrasound devices.
Which could mean
It could help expand the use of cardiac ultrasound outside of specialized echo labs, maybe in emergency rooms, primary care, even more remote settings. Makes the tech easier to use correctly.
democratizing ultrasound, potentially. Cool. Now, there are often different AI approaches for the same task. How do they compare?
That's what Zijin He and Alan McMillan looked at for chest x-rays, comparing older radiomics methods with newer deep learning models.
Radiomics being extracting lots of quantitative features from images.
Right, mathematical descriptors of texture, shave intensity, etc., versus deep learning, which learns features automatically from the raw pixels.
And they compared them for detecting things like COVID-19, pneumonia.
Yeah, on chest radiographs. They looked at how well each approach did, and also how performance changed with different amounts of training data.
Any clear winner.
It's often nuanced. Performance can depend on the specific disease, the dataset size. Their study gives insights into when one approach might be better than the other, which helps guide choices for building diagnostic tools.
Important comparative work. Okay, let's touch on language barriers. AI for medical QA in Japanese.
Right. Yingjian Shen and colleagues explored using knowledge graphs with retrieval augmented generation, RAG, for Japanese medical questions, specifically using smaller LLMs.
RA is where the AI retrieves relevant documents or facts first, then uses them to generate a better answer.
Exactly. And here they tried using a structured knowledge graph as the source for retrieval.
Did it help the smaller Japanese LLMs?
Interestingly, they found it had limited impact in their setup. The RA didn't dramatically improve performance.
Why not?
They suggest the effectiveness of RAG, especially knowledge graph-based RAG, might be really sensitive to the quality and relevance of the retrieved information, and maybe how well it integrates with the specific LLM and language.
So RAGs isn't a magic bullet. It depends on the details.
Seems so. Context matters.
Definitely. Okay, a really critical area. Brain tumors, specifically metastases.
Yes, a huge collaborative effort here. The Bratz-Metz 2025 Lighthouse Challenge. Lots of names involved, like Nazan and Maliki, Riza Emiruddin, many others.
What's the main goal of this challenge?
It's all about data. Creating large, high-quality, publicly available data sets of brain MRI scans showing metastases.
Cancer that has spread to the brain.
Right, and the data includes expert annotations outlines of the metastases on scans taken both before and after treatment.
Why is that important?
Because it allows researchers to develop and rigorously test AI algorithms for automatically segmenting these metastases, tracking their response to treatment. Having standardized, high-quality data is crucial for making progress.
So this challenge will provide that benchmark data for the whole field.
That's the plan. A major contribution to accelerate research.
Great initiative. Now, back to federated learning and privacy. Yuli and Lihong Zhang again with selective attention federated learning, or SO.
Building on their earlier layer skipping idea, it sounds like.
Yeah, this one focuses specifically on the attention mechanisms within transformer models, which are key parts of LLMs.
Attention helps the model weigh the importance of different words in a sentence.
Exactly. So SAFL dynamically fine-tunes only the attention layers that are most critical for the specific task, like clinical text classification.
So even more targeted updates than layer skipping.
Seems like it. The aim is further reduction in communication overhead compared to standard federated learning, and potentially enhanced privacy because less model information is shared.
While keeping performance high.
They report competitive performance on clinical NLP benchmarks. So another step towards making federated learning more efficient and private for healthcare. Balancing utility and privacy, always key.
Okay, a slightly different application now. Analyzing scientific talks.
Ah, the Art of Audience Engagement paper by Ralph Schmelzel's group, using LLMs for thin slicing.
What does thin slicing mean here? Making judgments from small amounts of information.
Exactly, like judging a person's personality from a brief interaction. Here, they applied it to scientific presentations.
Oh.
They used LLMs to analyze transcripts of talks. And they found that ratings based on short excerpts, the thin slices, could actually predict, quite reliably, how engaging and well-received the entire presentation was.
Really? Just from a snippet?
Apparently so. It suggests those first impressions, the opening moments of a talk, might be incredibly predictive of overall audience engagement.
It's slightly terrifying for anyone giving talks, but a fascinating finding about communication.
Definitely food for thought for presenters. Okay, one last major area we looked at. Diabetes treatment guidelines.
Right. Dwayne Kumar Agarwal and Dimitris Pertsimis used AI to try and create better guidelines for type 2 diabetes.
Better than current standard guidelines. How?
They used AI and optimization techniques on large amounts of observational data, real-world patient data, to figure out the most effective sequences of treatments over time.
Trying to personalize the progression of treatment based on data.
Essentially, yes. And crucially, they focused on making the resulting guidelines interpretable so doctors could understand the reasoning.
And the results. Did the AI guidelines work better?
Their findings showed that the treatment pipeline suggested by their AI approach led to significantly better blood sugar control, lower HbA1c levels, compared to what was typically achieved in practice in the datasets they studied.
Both in the training data and external validation sets.
Yes, which strengthens the finding. It really points to the potential for AI to analyze complex real-world data and help refine treatment strategies for chronic diseases like diabetes, making them more precise and data-driven.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground here.
We really have, from overdose prediction and imaging to chatbots and research tools.
It's crystal clear that AI and LLMs aren't just theoretical anymore in medicine. They're actively being developed and tested across an incredible range of applications.
Absolutely. The pace is just relentless, and the potential to really change things, better diagnoses, personalized treatments, more efficient research, new ways to support patients, it feels more tangible than ever.
Yeah, it really does. But we also saw the challenges, right? The need for accuracy, especially with rare conditions, the risks around misinformation from chatbots, the constant need for privacy and efficiency.
Definitely. It's not all smooth sailing. There's a lot of careful evaluation, ethical consideration, and robust engineering still needed. Bias, reliability, safety, those are paramount.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Mm.
Considering how fast all this is moving, how do you think this rise of AI in medicine might actually change the relationship between us as patients and the doctors and nurses who care for us? What role is AI going to play in how we understand our own health in the coming years?
That's a big question. Something to definitely keep thinking about as this technology continues to weave itself into healthcare.